Well, I've got a number of things that I want to cover today, and we've got about 22 slides to go through here. We're way behind. Apologies on my behalf because there were some technical um, hangups that I had. I was going to just share my screen, but I couldn't get the software to do the update for some reason. Something about having a certificate that wasn't matching the software developer code. So I had no idea what that was about. But in short, what I want to do to facilitate, I know that there are some people here. Well, Luxon was here, and he's actually not in Santiago. He's actually from Florida, and but I had opened this up to some other people because I wanted to make sure that if I'm going to be offering something online, there's no reason why it can't be international. So what I have in mind here is sharing with you a little bit about NLP, a little bit about hypnosis, and then my vision for how this complements our meetup group. And this is just a trial run here for the webinar format. So if you guys have any questions, just put it into the chat box and I'll keep my eye on that and make sure that we are moving forward. So what I like to look at things have new doorways of opportunity. This webinar, this whole experience is a new doorway of opportunity for us. Every day is a new day. We get a new start, we get a new chance. So the first thing that I want to do, and we're going to do this in all of the webinar series, we're just going to check in, do a little bit of energy management, I'll call it, and warm up for what's ahead. So let me see. Can you guys see the slides changing? Does that, you can put a one or a yes or C or no? Okay. So, like we talked about last week, and Luxon, I'll just give you a quick background. Uh, Luxon's in Florida, I think Miami area, and this webinar series is correlating with a live, I don't know if that's the right term, but it's part of a live meetup group here in Santiago, Chile. And what we're doing is we're using the meetup group to do actual techniques and activities. And it's an open format, it's a free event to bring people in. And then I want to offer paid webinars, a weekly paid webinar that will give more background information, give people some techniques and things that they can do. So one of the techniques that we covered last week was going into peripheral vision, stopping the world. So everybody, Luxon, I'm sure that you've used plenty of my programs and heard me talk before, so you know you're familiar with this stuff. But let's go here to this next page. What we want to do is go into peripheral vision, and that's where you just relax your eyes, and we focused on the tips of our thumbnails, hold our thumbs apart so our eyes open up, and we just see the sides of the walls, 180 degrees in front of us. And if you want, you could use this dot here to focus. And what I want us to do is just slow down our breathing for just a few seconds and breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, and then exhale for 5 seconds. And I'll go ahead and count this down. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So because we're going a little bit behind right now, I'm going to kind of speed through some things. But this is a great practice just to do anytime throughout the day. It's a great way to refresh your nervous system. You're essentially signaling to your nervous system that I am safe. I'm in a place where I can focus. I can be completely detached from outcomes, and that's that's where actually that's where we want to be most of the time. You know, have your goals in mind, but then detach from the outcomes so that you can live in the present moment. It looks like some of my slides here might have some issues too because I had to export this in from Keynote, which is an Apple product, to PowerPoint because I wasn't able to share my desktop. So right now, the next step that I want to do is the highest internal representation. We practiced this last time in class. Go ahead and close your eyes for a moment. And what I want you to do is imagine the next 30 minutes of your life, hearing me, seeing these slides, going through this process, and getting something of value out of it. Like I said, doorways that open up into new opportunities, new possibilities for your personal development, how that affects your health, your wealth, your relationships, and your spirituality. And just in your mind's eye, see me being the competent, capable teacher that can inspire you, that can offer new perspectives that shake up your paradigm. Take a deep breath, go ahead and open your eyes again, and we're going to do our grounding technique. These are the foundational supplements, I guess I'd call them, for each live meeting that we do and also each webinar. We're just going to spend a couple of minutes and go through those things. But this process is very powerful because what we're doing is we're creating a sacred space. This is a space for your growth, our collective learning, and I believe for the betterment of humanity. So envision whatever room you're in right now, or if you're outside, just envision your body within a cube or within that rectangle. It has 4 points at the top, 4 points at the bottom. Imagine going out and grabbing those 4 points at the top, pulling them down into the center, grabbing the 4 points at the bottom, pulling those up into the center, and then taking this point at the center and dropping it down the top of your head, down through the chakras, all the way down through your root chakra, the red chakra down at the perineum, and then allowing that to drop down through a vortex or a whirlpool down into the center of the earth. That's the visual process. This time, close your eyes and do it again. Do it in your mind's eye. Grab the top 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4. The bottom 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4. And allow everything, the baggage from today, everything that you've been holding on to, your concerns, hesitations, anxieties, overwhelms, even hopes, dreams, just allow all of that to collect with those 4 points, drop them down your chakras, down into the middle of the earth, letting it go. And then imagine like your root chakra is a waterfall. Imagine turning that off, stopping that flow of water down into the earth, stopping it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then let it go again. Just let it all drain out, drop down. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk the format for the webinars. There's going to be some learning experiences. There's also going to be some exercises in future webinars, but today it's mostly going to be informational. And so what I want to talk to you guys about are the foundations of NLP. What does the word neuro-linguistic programming mean? And keep in mind that this terminology came out of the 70s when it actually came out of Silicon Valley in the 70s when that term programming was starting to make its ways. Like I said, if you have any questions, just feel free to put them into the chat box and I will answer to the best of my ability. But when you think about the syntax or the actual etymology of the word, rather, neuro means of the mind, of the nervous system. The mind does not have a physical location. So it's all part of the neural network that comprises our nervous system. Linguistics is the study of language. And programming, the purpose of programming is to create a predetermined behavior. I don't think we typically think of that nowadays, but if you write a computer program, it's to do a certain process and to be able to duplicate that process many times over. So what we see here is the way that language affects our mind, affects our nervous system, and results in predetermined behavior. Essentially, if you're not controlling your mind, who or what is? It's like I look at it from the perspective like having utensils. You know, you have your knife, your spoon, your fork, And if you're never taught how to use those things, they could be dangerous. You could be clumsy with them, or you can learn how to use them effectively. The same thing with chopsticks might be a better example because that's cross-cultural. That's something that's out of our culture, and most people have to learn how to use chopsticks at a later date. Um, so these are things like nobody ever came to us and said, look, you learn how to communicate when you're a child, and you also learn how to poorly communicate. Because there are no Chileans in our group right now, I'm going to say something, but I think most Chileans would actually agree with me because from what I've heard, um, it's very popular here to have nannies come in from Peru because they have better grammar and they articulate Spanish differently and better than most Chileans do. That's at least what I've heard. So it goes back to what are we learning, and are we learning effective things? And if you look at Handler, founders of NLP, a professor of linguistics, and I believe the Richard Bandler was studying information systems at that time. And this was in the 70s, so keep in mind that this is not necessarily new information. But according to Richard Bandler, NLP is an attitude and a methodology that leaves behind a trail of techniques. And John Grinder says that NLP is the study of human excellence. So, how did NLP come about? It was based upon modeling behavior. How do you model a certain outcome? And one of the presuppositions of NLP is that if someone else can do a certain thing and they do it unconsciously, that behavior can be modeled to create success. So let's look at the sources of NLP. Where did NLP come from? Bandler and Grinder, they studied Alfred Korzybski, who who was a researcher and an author in the field of general semantics. He has a very interesting story. One day at a university, he was Russian, but one day at a university, he had a box of a tin of crackers, and in that day and age, I think this was around the 1920s. In that day and age, cookies and crackers would actually come in tin containers so that they would not spoil. And so he thought he would be funny, and he took a similar looking tin of crackers, but it was for dog biscuits. And so he emptied the contents of the cookie container into the container for the dog biscuits, and then he took a piece of paper and he covered that container. He then walked through the classroom and he offered his university students these crackers. These, they look like, standard cookies. And there, at that point, it was very difficult to distinguish the way that a dog biscuit looked, like a food for dog, a cracker for dogs, and a cracker for human beings. And so he goes through, and most of the students took this, and they're eating these crackers, and he takes off the piece of paper from the container, and he just sets the container up there. And it took a few minutes for people to catch on, and one student like runs out of the room vomiting, and the other students get mad at him, and he says, it's interesting because not only do we interact with words, but you can also eat them and experience their influence. Everything that we do, it comes within these packages that are symbols that represent the meanings that we assign to certain things. Would eating one of those dog biscuits hurt you? Probably not. Would it be the most tasty thing? I don't know either. But it's very interesting because he was one of the first individuals that started to put out the concept that not only do we interact with words, because the only thing that changed with his example was the label. He said the label of that container said dog biscuits on it instead of cookies for humans. It's a very interesting thing. There's been similar marketing blunders that have been done in Africa with the baby food, where Gerber, I don't know if you've ever seen a container of Gerber baby food, like applesauce. Well, it has a picture of the baby on it. It has a baby's face on it. In Africa, when Gerber tried to enter the marketplace there, what was done at that point in time? They had they would put the picture of the contents on the label because the majority of the population could not read. So Gerber failed horribly because they launched this new product in Africa, and what does it have on it? It has baby. So the people are like, "What is this blended baby? I'm not going to eat that." And there's lots of other things where we make these connotations with images and words, and we interact with them like they are reality, but they're not. Ivan Pavlov, the next individual, another Russian, he was the one who did research with conditioned response, and he was doing studies with dogs and the salivary process. And he had assistants that would go out and feed these dogs. And his assistants noticed after a while that they could just ring the bell and the dogs would run up and be ready to be fed. And Pavlov supposedly was doing research on the salivary process, and he noticed that by ringing the bell to summon the dogs for food or their mealtime, that the dogs would automatically begin salivating. And so he was able to test this hypothesis and discovered, yes, what you could do is you could take a physiological state like hunger, you're going to take an emotional state like excitement, and animals don't necessarily have the past, present, future anticipation that humans do. They live mostly in the present state. But when you compress those two, you take the emotions, you take the physiology, you combine them to a change of stimuli in the environment, then you got an anchor. And all you do is to trigger that anchor, you ring that bell. The bell's the anchor. Boom, the dog salivates. Ring the bell, boom. So how often do we do that? We do that all the time. Hear our boss's voice, go, oh shit, I don't want to, I'm going to get fired. We see, girls are very powerful. Your girlfriend raises her eyebrow like that, like, and you're like, oh no, what happened? And that's just an example. But we have these responses that all it takes is certain context, some constants in that environment, some emotional states, some physiological states, and boom, anchors are created. Most of the time, when pairs or couples are interacting with each other, they are bouncing off their triggers that they're firing for one another. All they have to say is one thing, say it in a certain way, certain tonality, and boom, those anchors are triggered and they're fired. We will definitely address that stuff later on. Milton Erickson was a very interesting individual who actually nearly died from polio, and when he was around 12 years old, the doctor he overheard the doctor tell his mother, and he was lying in his bed, literally his deathbed, and the doctor says to his mother, I don't think he's going to survive the night. He won't live to see the sunrise tomorrow. And that boy heard this, and when the doctor leaves, he calls in his mother. He says, Mom, open the blinds for the window and move my bed so that I can see out the window. And he survived that night. He stayed awake all night long to make sure that he saw the sunrise. That is self-hypnosis. That is powerful because what he did is he took that belief, and medical doctors do this all the time. They come out wearing their white jacket and they say, I'm sorry to tell you this, you got 3 months to live. What happens? Person dies. 3 months. I've said this example before, hundreds of years ago. What used to happen? Well, it would be the witch doctor. The witch doctor put a curse on you, placebo, and the person would die or something bad would happen to them. Moving on, Fritz Perls Gestalt therapy. Gestalt therapy is one of the most common concepts associated with Gestalt therapy is taking emotional constructs or emotional and mental imagery and dissociating from it. So one of the therapeutic techniques that was originally used by Fritz Perls was an approach like, okay, now go ahead and imagine your father sitting over in that chair across the room and tell that person whatever it is that you want to say. He was one that popularized that approach to dissociating from certain problems. Virginia Satir was a family therapist who had tremendous results within the Bay Area with her family counseling practice. And these were 5 people that were modeled by Bandler and Grinder when they started to develop NLP. I'm going to share something with you that is very powerful. This is the basis for um, the way that we process information. We're constantly being bombarded by information in our environment. So there's an infinite number of stimuli. If you look, just look around your room right now and try to count all of the different colors, shades. It's impossible. Same thing with the sounds, especially here in Santiago, it's noisy. Same thing with feelings in your body. I'm sure that your left big toe feels different than your pinky finger on your right hand. The thing is, often we're not paying attention to this because we are filtering this information. So if you look at the slide here, we have an external experience comes in. Let's say that that this woman walks into a lunch meeting, an external experience. She's perceiving the environment through her 5 senses. There are the filters of that are responsible for distorting, deleting, and generalizing experiences that are happening. And so those filters, they utilize time and space, matter and energy. So for example, if there's a conversation happening, like for example, I don't know if you can hear it in the background, but my roommate currently has a friend over for dinner. And so I can hear little bits and pieces of that conversation kind of leaking through. But for the most part, there is a barrier of matter and energy and also space, distance, that is blocking that conversation from being heard. So what happens is I filter it out for the most part. Language, being in a primarily a environment, it's less and less easy, but initially it was very easy for me to just block out that process, the experience of hearing other people speaking in Spanish, because I would be processing information in English. Whereas if I'm hearing an English conversation, it's being understood almost immediately. And Shai, maybe for you, it's something in Hebrew, which is easier, like maybe the most easy for you to not filter. I don't know. It could be. Just depends on whatever you learned first. The same thing with memories. Why aren't you paying attention to what happened to you last Monday right now? Because it's not relevant, but it's still there. It's still in your nervous system. Decisions. Decisions are statements of belief. Like they direct or they lead us towards things that are congruent with our beliefs. Meta programs are essentially like personality types, the ways that we look for verification or validation from our environment. Values and beliefs are our values and beliefs. It's pretty loaded, and those are something that we're definitely going to get into in the future because your value system and your beliefs create or prevent you from the experiences that you want to have in life. And attitudes are I personally believe that attitudes are passed on generationally, and they're also social in terms of almost like memes, like information packages that people share and they disperse. So there's a saying that show me your 5 friends and I'll tell you what sort of person you are, or your 5 closest friends and I'll tell you what sort of person you are, because groups typically have their own attitudes. It doesn't, it's not a bad thing or a negative or positive thing. It's just neutral. It is what it is. So this information comes in when this woman walks into a lunch meeting, and it instantaneously is processed through all of these different filters. For the same reason, like one part of this is uh, reticular activating system. This is the part of your nervous system. It's actually part of your brain that is responsible for sorting and prioritizing information. So this is why when you go out and you buy a new bicycle or a new pair of shoes, new car, whatever it might be, that suddenly you start to see that everywhere. Or you start to, maybe you're interested in going to Brazil for vacation. And then everywhere you're seeing, airfare offers for Brazil, people talk about Brazil, meeting Brazilian people. whatever it could be. But it's not that these things didn't exist before, it's that you are now paying attention to them. So all of this happens in a split second. And the next part of this is it hits your internal representations. So it happens, and then you start to generate self talk, mental movies. These mental movies and the self talk affect your physiology. They either cause you to feel good or bad, powerful or impotent. And those affect your state, that process of feeling good or bad, powerful or impotent. And that results in your behavior. So this is what's happening behind the scenes every single time we have an interaction with our environment. Doesn't matter if it's other people, with information in our environment, what have you. That's what's going on behind the scenes. We have 5 representational systems in NLP. And then there's also another one that's called auditory digital, which is self-talk, logic, symbols. When I changed this to PowerPoint, it kind of changed the formatting there. But we respond often to symbols because symbols communicate directly to our unconscious mind. Symbols are archetypal. We can see right now Santa Claus. Everybody has associations for Santa Claus, even if they're not from a Judeo-Christian background or not. There's some sort of representation or association with that. All of our 5 senses, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, yes, they exist right now in real time, but we could also go inside of our mind's eye. We could go inside of our internal representation. You could close your eyes and you could visualize what it's like to see your mother's eyes, or to hear your father's voice, or to feel what it feels like to pet a cat or a puppy dog. These are all things that are happening both internally and externally. Yeah, my apologies here. We got a little bit of some formatting issues because I wasn't able to share my screen. But there are a lot of NLP techniques that I can share with you. That's my purpose for this webinar series, is to share these techniques because they're going to create more possibilities for you and more resources. There's a statement about closed environments or closed circuits, cybernetics. The person with the most resources in any given situation will always come out ahead. The more flexibility you have, the more flexible your paradigm is, the more you can manage your state, manage your reactions or responses, the more opportunities you have to move and experience in the direction that you want it to go. Foundations of hypnosis. The individual sitting here was Milton Erickson, brilliant hypnotherapist. He was um, he almost died of polio when he was a child, and he was able to retrain his body. He was wheelchair ridden for a number of years, and he had to go through a process of conditioning his body. But while he was lying in bed for years, he would have these experiences where he could predict who was walking down the hallway because I think he had 7 or 8 siblings. He could determine who was walking down the hallway by the sound of their footsteps. You could also determine what their emotional state was. And he could pick up on whether or not women were on their periods. Very strange stuff. What he sounds like a magician, and he was given these kind of like supernatural qualities. But what really happened is he was confined in a sense where he had to depend upon other senses in order to get by in the world. And for the rest of his life, he still had problems with that were related to polio. And what happened is because his physical movements were limited, he had to use his auditory and his visual senses a lot more profoundly than most of us are required to. There's a massive difference between direct hypnosis and indirect hypnosis, which is also referred to as Ericksonian hypnosis. Hollywood has done a great job in terms of, um, I guess, kind of blackballing or blacklisting a very therapeutic process that I believe when you trace the roots of it back, it goes back through most shamanic traditions. It can be hypnosis could be traced back to the sleep temples of Egypt. But what Hollywood tends to present is direct hypnosis because it's something that they could focus upon because there's techniques instead of a mindset and patterns. So one of the direct hypnosis techniques would be the use of a pinwheel or a watch or something to pay attention to while a person goes into a trance state. Then they will give direct um, directions in the sense like imagine going down an elevator as I count down from 100, or you're beginning to feel sleepy, or you're beginning to feel relaxed, or close your eyes when I count down from 3. Those sort of things do not work for most people. Uh, what happens is if you do not want to be hypnotized, direct hypnosis will not work for you because it generates resistance. However, when you look at Ericksonian hypnosis or conversational hypnosis, it is nothing like that. Here's an example that you can see here. Think about this. If somebody says, you may or may not notice the comfortable sensations in your hands, you may or may not. Okay, you gave me 2 choices. I don't have to do it. You're not telling me I have to do it. But remember the other day in the first uh, meetup group that we had when I said, don't pay attention to the red car? We can't help but process. You can't not process negatives. Is that the power of suggestion? Asked Kathy. Well, what is suggestion? Suggestion would be using a question that generates the internal response that you want, right? Most of us have been taught to use grammar poorly. We have not been taught to use language to generate the results that we want. So it's the same as saying, you know, I think you should do this breakthrough you webinar series because I don't want you to feel overwhelmed and anxious in your life. Where did I put your attention? Overwhelmed, anxious. Maybe if you're moving away from things, which is a meta program, if your modus operandi is to try to get away from pain, yeah, that might work for you. But I think as you're probably a pretty self-aware individual, and I say that you're moving towards what you want instead of trying to get away from what you don't want. So is it the power of suggestion? Yeah, oh yeah, you bet. And I think that was the power that quote unquote wizards or bards had back in the day, because what could they do? Like an individual like what we know about the alleged Shakespeare, he could with the use of a pen, the use of words and language, nothing more, he could tear down kingdoms. He could mock and ridicule people. That's the same. That's the kind of power that a comedian has in this day and age. Also, it's a very powerful thing because what they can do is they can put their attention onto something and they can turn it into a joke. Um, what what Ericksonian hypnosis does is it places the attention towards the outcome. When somebody says, for example, how would it feel if you had already made this change? The only way that you can answer that question is you have to do what's called a transderivational search, which means you have to go inside your mind and you have to hallucinate an answer. When I meet with business people, I ask, how will you know when you've met the right person that you're looking for? How will you know when you found the person that you want to hire? They go inside to answer my question. They go inside, generate the criteria, and then it's up to me to associate that criteria with me. So here's another one. Sooner or later, you'll want to close your eyes. Yeah, sooner or later, you're going to blink. You're going to close your eyes and fall asleep. It doesn't say when. So these are truisms. Just like You may not know that this is going to be, or if this is going to be fun. You may not know lots of things. People say all kinds of things when they really want a straight answer. So there are ways of using language that puts the content within a context. It's kind of like it puts the information within a capsule and it just slides by a person's defenses. It just goes right through their mind because the only thing that they can do is they can focus upon the outcome, where those words take them. These are very powerful things to practice, and we're going to practice a lot of these both in the webinar series and also live in our breakthrough or our meetup group. So these are some of the names of the Ericksonian hypnosis techniques that we'll learn. And there's lots of them. I actually have flashcards that have probably around 100 of them on there. What this leads us to is the unconscious mind. And one of the beliefs is that all learning, behavior, and change is unconscious. How do you go from not knowing how to swim to knowing how to swim? How do you go from not knowing how to read to knowing how to read? How do you go from not knowing how to, say, drive a car to driving a car? There is that gray space in there that is the part of that transition. It's a process. And this process happens unconsciously, but this process can also be modeled. So what we can do is we can take very powerful people, yeah, or speak Spanish. It's an ongoing process. And we all have these qualifiers in a sense that sure, I can ride a bicycle and I can go down the street, but I can't do downhill racing like the pros do and go off those jumps that are 30, 40 feet in the air. Can't do that. Those are different degrees. So can I order a coffee? Would that allow me to consider myself a Spanish speaker? Yeah, sure. But I'm not able to defend my thesis for my doctorate that I got while studying at a Spanish university. So, there's different processes in there, but all of it is unconscious. So it's unconscious because we have not taken the time to break it down into conscious techniques, strategies, process. So here is essentially what the unconscious mind does. It controls and maintains all perceptions. It generates, stores, and distributes and transmits energy. The unconscious mind will respond with instinct and habit. The unconscious mind is programmed to continually seek more and more. And if you have questions while I'm reading these, go ahead and ask. Repressed memories. It will repress memories with unresolved negative emotions. It will present repressed memories for rationalization. The unconscious mind is the domain of the emotions. It is symbolic. It takes everything personally. It works on the principle of least effort, and it follows the path of least resistance. The conscious mind does not process negatives. It's like saying, Johnny, don't run with the scissors. What does he do? He runs over to his mommy and hands her the scissors. Because he heard, run with the scissors. He has to make that representation of it. The unconscious mind runs the body. You're not consciously focusing upon making your heart beat, regulating your breathing, monitoring your pulse, all of these things that are happening unconsciously. The unconscious mind is a highly moral being. I believe one of the presuppositions here is that all things that human beings do, they do it for the highest good, according to their paradigm, to their belief system. Every action serves a higher purpose. Even, and you can look at the most horrible, horrendous situations. Often they are justified by the pursuit of a higher good. The unconscious mind is a servant which follows orders, and it keeps repressed emotions repressed for protection. It also stores and organizes memories. And there's some very powerful NLP timeline based techniques that we can use to go back and go forward in time and change memories, because memories are both present, past, and future. So here's what this is, just wrapping up the webinar today. Here's what I'm presenting as a training opportunity. So I'm going to continue with the meetup group here in Santiago, Chile. I would like to lock down a location. I will do my best to keep it free, but if it grows and we need a better location or a bigger location, then there might be a small fee just to pay the cost of that location. That's going to be live practice of a variety of techniques that we cover in Breakthrough You and then outside of it. The real meat, the information behind the techniques and the opportunity to ask questions and for me to go into greater details and explain some of the nuances with NLP, hypnosis, and other personal development topics. That's going to be covered in Breakthrough You. What I have in mind is an online webinar. And for the first group of people, I want to keep it relatively inexpensive, just $10, $10 US a week. And if you look at the pre-requirements for certification in NLP for a basic practitioner and a master practitioner, they're about 40 hours each with live workshop time. So if we do if somebody's in this Breakthrough You for a year and also attending, roughly 20 hours of the meetup groups, I will go ahead and issue an NLP basic practitioner certification. I'm an NLP trainer. And if we do this for 2 years and somebody logs that amount of time, I will also gladly issue a master practitioner. My goal with this, most people that do study NLP, they go to a week-long training series for 40 hours, 40 or 50 hours, depending upon the instructor. And it's like drinking out of a fire hydrant. They get so much information and it's condensed. They have an emotional experience in most cases, and then they come out and somebody says, "So what's NLP?" And they're like, "Shit, I don't know." Or are there like techniques or well, yeah, we did stuff, but I don't know what it is. Um, I'm personally not that big on certifications. I look at it and I go, certifications and degrees are part of the problem with incompetence in our world today. What we need is less people with paper saying that they can do something and more people actually doing stuff. And um, if that's important to you though, and you do the time, I will gladly issue certifications because you're going to have a much better and a broader background and experiences than the average person coming out of a basic NLP or master NLP training. And Luxon and people that are going to be distance learners, I think that there's something I could set up that would be different, which would possibly be another webinar where we actually do techniques, and I can figure that out too if that's something that interests you, the certification. The benefits of this, what I see for the webinar side is professional. You're going to learn effective communication. You're going to be able to manage your mindset, and for the most part, this is what's going to remove any sort of professional limitations. And what I see is you're going to be able to empower and motivate yourself to make decisions that will also influence the lives of other people. And you do this through precision with your words, precision with your language. The personal side of it is the gold. Like I said, most of the conflicts and relationships happen because of communication issues. There's a great way that you can. There are powerful ways that you can create rapport and express yourself, and also understand what what is behind what other people are saying. That's a process referred to as mind reading, but you can start to develop. If you could do uh, I guess imagine what it would be like to be able to do a Myers-Briggs personality assessment within the first 5 to 10 minutes of meeting somebody. Then on top of that, being able to apply that over time with your friends, family, um, lover, whatever the arrangement is, but doing it in a way that reduces those potentials for conflict, so that you can open up and just kind of remove the barriers of communication, so you could have some free flowing communication there. I think that's what one of the things that people have the largest problems with tends to be money, finances, and relationships. So the heart and the wallet. So if you can take control of those areas of your life, that's literally priceless. And a lot of it happens not by trying to change the other person, but by changing yourself. And this is really the proactive way to do it. Um, there's another presupposition of NLP which says the meaning of your communication is the response that you get. Essentially, if people aren't responding to you the way that you want them to respond, change your communication style, change the context, or change the content. And that's really the coolest thing about NLP is it gives you that sort of testing mindset where it's like, oh, you know what? I'm not afraid to fail anymore because failure is just feedback. That's another NLP presupposition. But you start with that mindset going, well, I can go out there, I can do this. If it doesn't work, I can make these adjustments and I can go try it again. There's less of that fatality sort of mindset that many people have been conditioned to experience. So I want to leave you with, what is your pain? What do you want more of in life, which means that you're not getting what you want? And what do you want less of in life, which means you're getting too much of something you don't want? I want you guys to think about this over the course of the week, and maybe tomorrow. Some of us here, especially in Chile, where we are away from family, and it's the holiday season, and it can tend to maybe stir up some of the emotions and nostalgia. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. What you can do is take those states and ask yourself with clarity, what do I want more of? What would make those nostalgic sensations or feelings go away? Reflect upon your future, your past, and imagine, if you continue doing what you've been doing, where are you going to end up? If you've been doing the same thing for a few years and it's not resulting in what you want, how willing are you to change it and try something new? And what my goal is within the webinar side of the Breakthrough You or Santiago Personal Development Group is to give you, to share with you, and to more than just share with you, but actually refine, test, and practice some of the most powerful techniques that I believe are available in personal development and professional development. These are things that once they become ingrained into your way of thinking and living, they're going to naturally come out in your language, and it's going to give you a higher degree of uh, perception and also flexibility in all things. So I want to thank you guys for staying with me this evening. We got a late start. I didn't mean to go this long, but we're a little bit over. Do you have any questions, any concerns? My plan for next week is to do a live meetup again. I don't know if you could set that up, Shy. Um, and I just want to point out too that tonight might have seemed like a lot of just kind of I don't know, like a 101 class in terms of setting up the foundations of some of these things. They, it's important to know because there's a lot of misinformation out there about NLP and hypnosis. And um, if I can create a strong foundation for that, because I don't remember who it was, there's a pastor here in one of the groups, um, and obviously is very skeptical. He's like, well, NLP, isn't that like a cult or something? And it's like, well, if understanding how your brain works is a cult, I guess it is. But I don't know. Uh, but yeah, I want to thank you guys, Luxon, Kathy, and Shai for showing up. And my vision is to grow this. I would love to have 20, 30, 40, 50 people on this webinar. And the more people I can get going here, obviously the more resources and time I can dedicate to it. And then also continue to grow our breakthrough U group and meetup group. Um, Lexon is asking, so his internet cut out. So in case I lose connection, can we have an update or review by email? Yeah, hey, what I'm going to do too is I'm creating a membership site. It's actually linked to my US business, my michaeljamry.com site. There's a subdomain, a sub membership site called MJE Training. And what I'll do is everybody that's in this group, I will create so everybody that's a paying member of the webinar group, I will create a membership account for them so they can log in and you'll have access to all kinds of stuff in there. I'll even throw in other goodies and additional bonuses. But what I'll do is each one of these webinars will be recorded. So I'll have a recording of that in there. And then there will also be audio and hopefully video in the future of the live meetup groups. So that way people can actually see the techniques. And what I want to do is just create a resource for personal development that's based upon NLP and hypnosis. And that way you can always, it'll be like a library for you. You can always go back, review content, review the information, and just stay up to date. You can download the audio and or the video, and that way just take it with you, listen to it. So I think that's one of the best things to do is just saturate your mind with this because especially with the NLP and hypnosis, you really want this to show up in your language and the way that you think. So cool. Thank you, Shai, for looking into scheduling next Wednesday. And Lexon, thank you. Glad you're learning. It's fun. So, y Kathy, Feliz Navidad. All right, you guys. Well, I thank you. I will on our meetup page, and then I'll also work on setting up the membership site access if for people that want to sign up. The last thing too, I just want to point this out for people that are living in Chile but don't have a route and can't do a transfer, I can set up the PayPal option for you to like do a PayPal membership for a weekly payment. And then if you do have a coin to root, I need to just set up the transfer process on that. So it's like an automatic transfer process every week. And that way it just kind of simplifies things. And it also creates some accountability. Whereas, you think about this, you're like, oh, I'm making this investment, it's a couple beers, a couple glasses of wine a week, $10 a week in my personal development, but I want to make sure that I'm using it. And so that's really what I really want is you to get the most out of it. So, all right, you guys, thank you. Have a great Navidad. Talk to you later.